We've a special episode this month for you land-loving shanty enthusiasts. But as always, our episode starts with a bit of history about the composers of today's featured ballad, the comedians best known as Key and Peele, both of whom met at a theatre known as the Second City. What happened to the first city, you may ask? Well, apparently a cow burnt it down. Could use a lass with that kind of grit on me crew. But I digress. The Second City boasts a theatre for sketch writing. Skits, if you will. Ballads without music. But these two comrades in arms befriended one another and decided to bring some music into their work, good lads, in the form of a feminist sea shanty. Now there be a common misconception of what feminism is. At its core, it's the concept that men and women should be treated equally. Unfortunately, many a dame use the term as an excuse to bully menfolk. But let me tell you, lot, if a lady treat a man with sexism, that ain't feminism. By Davy Jones, that's the opposite. But our boys Key and Peele, they know the concept well. They know it mean all folks deserve to have their body, their livelihood, and their character respected. And their song shows just that. Unfortunately, back in the day, this idea wasn't on the forefront of people's minds. Pillaging conquered territories often went hand in hand with pillaging their ladyfolk. Ladyfolk that willfully offered their sexual services often did so out of necessity to live, as little work was available to them, and their clients were often less than kind to him. Perhaps it's for that very reason modern-day depictions of these olden times change the narrative, where we see swashbuckling women alongside men. Now, not to say there weren't powerful women back in the day. In fact, a powerful lady from China, known as Cheng Yi Sao, is arguably the most successful pirate of all time. Why, her own country was so desperate to be rid of her that they reluctantly sought foreign aid and had European navies sail vessels out to stop her. They failed. She was so afeared by the Chinese government that when it came time for her to retire, she convinced the Qing government of the time to show her and her crew some generous leniency so that they might be more comfortably integrated into more polite society. But while other women also roamed and conquered the high seas, their stories are few and far between. And even still, some such as Jacquot de la Haye and Charlotte de Berry, popular in literature and storytelling, might not have ever existed. At least no historical records exist for them beyond stories and literature telling fantastical tales of them. Again, perhaps for the very reason that ladyfolk weren't given the spotlight in their time. Modern folk are eager to bless it upon them. But there are many other strong lasses, such as Grace O'Malley, Anne Bonny, and Mary Read, whose names do appear in historical records, sometimes those records being of their criminal activity, verifying that they certainly did roam the seas. Now, before we dissect today's shanty, let's learn a wee bit more about Key and Peele, a dynamic duo of comedy. Both friends are biracial to black and white parents, which seems to make them more comfortable dissecting race in their skits. And to the best of me research, both seem to come from loving and stable families, which I can't help but think influences their work as well. Curiously, our boy Jordan Peele has focused his energies the last several years into horror. That's quite a diversion from comedy, one might think. But nay, if anything, it's more of a cousin to comedy. As he stated in interviews, comedy and horror both play off of presenting your audience with the unexpected, of impeccable timing in order for a joke or a shock to have an impact. If anything, he's just put a new skin on the work he does. But we're going to enjoy the good man's comedic energy today. And before we take a look at his and Key's song, let's take a look at some notable vocabulary from it. Barley. A grain from the barley plant itself. This grain is often used for brewing alcoholic beverages, as well as for feeding stock and cattle. Yo-ho. Alright, so did pirates or sailors of any sort really say yo-ho? Well, sorry to burst your bubble, matey, but probably not. The first time yo-ho appears in writing of any sort is in Treasure Island, the 1883 novel by Robert Louis Stevenson. Now, some shanties might have variations that sound similar to yo-ho, such as heave-ho, yo-heave-ho. But curiously, between oral tradition and written songs, you don't see yo-ho appear even in shanties. Leeds. This UK city, built along the River Aire, originated as a small mill town and became quite the market town in the 16th century. It developed into a major production and trading centre, and it holds the unique claim to fame of having been the birthplace of the invention of carbonated water in the 1760s. Thank you, Leeds, for your contribution to hard seltzers. Booty, besides one's rear end, is also used to refer to spoils of war, of plunder taken from a raid. It can literally mean a rich or prize. Cutlass, a short and curved sword, historically used by sailors on warships. Think of it like the machete of the sea. She, for ships. So this actually be an interesting linguistical quirk, methinks. Traditionally, ships used to be compared to, if not outright dedicated to goddesses, sometimes even having some goddess or feminine figurehead on the prow of a ship. Some theorize another reason ships are often referred to as she is that the Latin word for ship, navis, is female. Yet curiously, in other Latin languages like Italian, Spanish, and French, the words for ship are masculine. Yet another theory is that a vessel offers a sense of comfort and safety on the high seas, in a motherly sense to the crew, hence why the menfolk of crews came to start referring to their vessel as a she. Dysmorphia. Alright, so admittedly I misheard the lyrics as saying dysphoria, which is feeling like your body is not your own, or that it isn't built the way it should be. Usually we hear dysphoria used by folk born a man but feel they should have been born a woman, or vice versa. Common amongst the trans and non-binary communities. Now, bodily dysmorphia, not dysphoria, dysmorphia, is just as sinister, but it have a different meaning. You see, body dysmorphia is obsessing over self-perceived flaws in one's body or beauty, which, as the lyrics point out, can be instigated by degrading language from others. Golden eye. Folks with amber eyes are sometimes described as having a golden eye. Superstitious folks have sometimes said those with golden eyes have supernatural abilities. Doubloons. A Spanish golden coin. If you have one, it's worth a pretty penny, but the currency is no longer used in Spain or the Greater Seas. And with that, let's hear this here shanty. Many thanks to new and returning singers alike, including Sneha Kumar, Happy Lager, Blump Audios, Captain Antpez, HyperTrent, and Lucililium.
Once met a lass so fine, she was drunk on barley wine. I'd been to sea for months or 3, I knew I could make her mine. At last was past consent, so it was off with her we went. And we threw her in bed and rested her head, and we left, 'cause that's what gentlemen do.
A woman has a right to a drink or two without worrying about what you will do. We say yo-ho, but we don't say ho, 'cause ho is disrespectful, yo.
There once was a girl from Leeds, who I heard was good on her knees. So I docked my ship for an overnight trip to take care of all my needs. She was fine as the tales did tell, and my mast began to swell. So I laid her down and raised her gown, and performed cunnilingus for an hour or so.
Always take care of your lady fair, 'cause they deserve as much attention down there. We say yo-ho, but we don't say ho, 'cause ho is disrespectful, yo. Yarr!
I once had a woman so fair, whose womb contained my heir. With a son by my side, deceased would ride, the child she would bear. But my girl, she was no fool. She was working her way through school. So I did support when she chose to abort, because it's her body and therefore her choice.
No, we don't say booty unless we're talking about gold. We don't look at chests as the treasure holds. With a hat and a feather and a cutlass on her hip, we don't ever say she when we're talking about a ship. We don't say bitch and we don't say whore, 'cause that language leads to things like bodies nor beyond.
There was a lady with a golden eye, and the doctor said she would die. So she emptied her purse and lifted the curse and prayed to stay alive. She awoke the very next day, and her grave she lay. But the scariest part of the story from the start is I bet you assume the doctor was a man.
Shiver me timbers, I did.
Women are doctors too, and for a fraction of the blues, we say yo-ho, but we don't say ho, 'cause ho is disrespectful, yo.
There was a slut with tits to hear, and an ass that...
Cause it's yo-ho, but we don't say ho. Cause ho is disrespectful, yo.